This episode of Profiles in Risk is sponsored by IA Path. IA Path, unlocking your adjusting superpowers. Go to iapath.com.
This is Profiles in Risk. Hosted by Nick Lamparelli. Every week, we interview those who risk life, limb, fortunes, career, and reputation, and those who work behind the scenes who look to protect and enlighten us about risk. You can find the show notes and other insurance-related content at insnerds.com. That's insnerds.com. Now, on to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Profiles in Risk. I'm your host, Nick Lamparelli. On this beautiful Saturday morning, I am pleased to introduce Lawanda Hall. Lawanda is and has been a risk manager for a couple of Fortune 500 companies, BMW and Coke, to mention a couple. And I am very pleased to have her on the show so that we can talk about what she does and how she does it and her interest in insurance. So, Lawanda Hall, welcome to Profiles in Risk. Happy Saturday.
Thank you, Nick. Happy Saturday to you as well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. We've had a couple of professors from universities that teach risk management, but not someone that's purely doing risk management. So this is kind of a first for us. So I wanted to start out. I'm always interested in folks that actually study risk management and insurance. What made you want to study risk management in college?
That's interesting because in this industry, I run across very few people who actually did this on purpose. Like they actually went to school to study risk management.
That's my whole point. Like,
right.
what kind of drugs were you on that made you want to study that?
Right. It's like no drugs were involved, actually. I always really enjoyed math in school, and in high school, I took an AP math class where my teacher, Gregory Wright, teachers make a huge difference in the world, clearly. He took us through this process of what I know now to be quantitative analytics and predictive modeling. And so the section was called projections. And we had to figure out the future cost or the future impact of things that happened in the past or that were happening currently. And I just really enjoyed that and thought it was super, super interesting because not only am I getting to do math and mental gymnastics, but it actually has an impact. Like it actually has a purpose in the world where I could apply it. And that was the first thought about applying math in the world outside of accounting, which my mom was an accountant and I had entertained that, but it wasn't as exciting as what I was doing in this section of math for projections. So I talked to Mr. Wright and said, hey, what profession is this attached to? Because I think it's super interesting and I would love to do this. And he introduced me to the profession of actuary science. And so I thought, wow, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an actuary. And I got all the research and, did all of my homework to understand what an actuary was. And so I initially was going to major in actuary science, and I did that at Georgia State University. And then over the course of maybe a year or so, I went to go do an intern for a day with actuaries, and I love actuaries. I love the work they do. However, the environment was not conducive to my personality at all. So I thought, okay, let me rethink.
Yeah, I had a feeling there was going to be a but there.
Like, let me rethink this a little bit. So I love the work, and would have been a lot richer by now had I stuck with actuary science. However, I went to my counselor and said, look, I love the work, but I need more people, more pulse, more excitement, more than sitting in front of a computer for 8-10 hours a day. And so she informed me that risk managers are the customers of the work that actuaries use, in addition to some other insurance professionals, and that risk management and insurance involves more people and other kinds of problem solving, in addition to utilizing the actuary analysis for their everyday. And so I changed my major to risk management and insurance, and here I am.
No, that's a funny story. So let's talk about the advantages. So, you graduate from college and you have a background where you probably understand a lot of what insurance professionals do on a day-to-day basis. So before we even get to the risk management professional side of things, what do you think of the advantages? So for those that are listening, I was actually just talking to someone recently who was thinking of going back and getting their master's degree in risk management. So what are the advantages of getting an undergraduate degree in risk management and insurance?
Well, I think the biggest advantage is that you're equipped with the vocabulary necessary to explore the risk of any and everything. And I think that's important because how you language things is important as far as navigating any subject matter. And so college enhanced my curiosities and provided me with the vocabulary necessary to explore the risk. And that's the main function, I think, of any degree. You have to be able to speak the language of that discipline and be able to navigate that effectively. I personally think that every college student should have to learn the basics of insurance and have to learn the basics of both insurance and real estate. I just think that's important because as you navigate life, those are things that are going to come up and you need to understand how to navigate those things responsibly. But that's the biggest advantage, the enhancement of curiosity and the vocabulary to navigate.
Yeah. So you do risk management on a day-to-day basis. How would you classify the difference between what you do as a risk manager and what a traditional insurance professional will do? What are some of the additional things that you need to worry about, that you need to perform on a day-to-day basis, that a lot of insurance professionals may not know or understand?
So let me just make a distinction because I think it's important for this conversation and just for people to understand risk management as a discipline. So my degree is in risk management and insurance. Insurance is a significant part of risk management, but it's only a part of risk management. Risk management is a discipline unto itself, and insurance is one of the risk treatment, so to speak, for how you solve for risk management challenges. And so there's a symbiotic relationship, but they're not, identical and the same. And so thank you for that question. And so there's so many roles to play in both the risk management discipline and the insurance industry. And so what I see as what insurance people do is that they manage the terms and conditions of insurance policies and putting that together and making sure that they're intentional about what they want to cover and what they don't want to cover. And so an insurance policy is an agreement like any other agreement, and the management of that is what the insurance industry is about. Risk management is managing risk, and they use insurance as a tool to transfer risk. But there's so many other ways to do that as well. And so that will be the distinction, that
Yeah.
insurance is a tool used by risk managers, one of many tools used by risk managers for their day to day.
Yeah, when I think of risk managers, I always think of the person that's conducting the fire safety classes, the person that's walking around, the factory, who's basically saying, no, no, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. And you're so right. It goes, their job is to figure out what the risks are, and one by one figure out, okay, how are we going to deal with these? Some of them will transfer them to insurance, some of them will deal with internally, and we'll just make sure that we have internal processes and procedures so people don't get hurt, and all of that. So you're right, it's like this discipline that can get very, I guess, very complicated, very in depth, that's I guess that's a really important distinction because in a lot of places the risk manager is not well received because sometimes they're the ones that's telling you no, like no, you can't do this, or this is going to create reputational risk for us. Could you talk a little bit about that part of it and how important the risk manager is to the company to the organization itself, and how you're not just a no person?
Right. So that perception is very real. And a lot of people who don't understand risk management think that the risk manager is the mean person that's just going to, say no. And they think that our risk managers are risk averse and they're going to be the parent of the company and say, no, you can't do this. And that's not the case. I think in my experience, I've partnered with people in organizations in order to make sure that we are minimizing or mitigating any negative risk and then maximizing upward risk, because it's, people think risk and they think, oh my gosh, you got to think of the worst thing that can happen. But the flip of that is that you also have to think about the good things that can happen and make sure that you're managing the possibility of the good risk occurring, and protecting the bottom line from the bad risk occurring. So I would say it is a partnership. Now, oftentimes people won't go to the risk manager proactively because they think you're going to say no. And then when a claim happen or when an incident happens, they want to come running to the risk manager to save the day and solve the problem. And at that point, you don't need a risk manager. You need a claims adjuster or a crisis manager or Olivia Pope. You
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
need,
I was hoping you would throw that reference in.
right? You would need Olivia Pope at that point. And that's more a reactive posture, and risk management is a discipline designed to be proactive so that you can consider all of the possibilities and engage in a responsible way. And so that's the difference that I would say is, the perception versus the reality. Risk managers are your partners to make sure they help you do things well. And I'm one of those people that one of those rare people that are equally creative and analytical. And so for me, the most interesting engagement is when I'm able to partner with a project or, some kind of activation that's going on in a company and be able to be a part of that conversation up front so that I can make sure that certain things are being considered. Not that it's like, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that, but you need to consider these things, and then let's be creative about how we engage in a way that we're not creating down risk.
Yep. We're going to go into some of those risks. Before we do that, let's stay on the the initial phases, like the actual studying of risk management or to become a risk manager. If there's a young professional listening to this that might be interested in becoming a risk manager, so they didn't study in school, Lawanda, but they might be interested, how would you go about becoming a risk manager without studying risk management and insurance in college? What are some of the things that you might do? And we'll get right back to this podcast right after a short message from our sponsor. I'm back with Chris Stanley, founder of IAPath. Chris, when someone is interested in becoming an independent adjuster or independent appraiser, what can IAPath offer them?
Nick, at IAPath, we recognize that getting people to take a chance on a new vendor or independent adjuster is challenging. So one thing that we do to help IAs is train them, certify them, and mentor them. We want to give them the skills to actually do the job and in turn give the hiring companies confidence to try out our graduates. We call these interactive online courses and mentorships boot camps. We also offer self-paced training videos and IA networking and support through our monthly membership that we call the League of IAs.
Learn to write auto, heavy truck, and other claim types with IAPath's online trainings. Unlock your adjusting superpowers. Go to iapath.com. If there's a young professional listening to this that might be interested in becoming a risk manager, so they didn't study in school, Lawanda, but they might be interested, how would you go about becoming a risk manager without studying risk management and insurance in college? What are some of the things that you might do?
I would first say, get a mentor that is a risk manager so they can give you the understanding of what the day-to-day is. You definitely should be a forward-thinking person, have quite a bit of curiosity, have a proactive posture, and be very good at problem solving, because lots of problem solving skills are necessary. Um, and as far as learning goes, if you understand the matrix of risk management and you are able to, as a basis, and you're able to wrap your mind around, basic insurance coverage, and then get a mentor who can help you apply those transferable skills into the world of risk management, I think that would be a responsible way to start that process.
I have an associate's in risk management designation from the institutes. I'm not familiar if there are any others. So are you familiar with anything else that might be out there for certification or designation programs?
Oh yeah, there are quite a few certifications through the institutes. So the grandfather of them would be the CPCU, which is the Chartered Property Casualty Underwriting designation. And so those are tests that you can either self-study, study online, or go to classes for in order to understand risk management. And those test books are often the textbooks that are used in risk management programs. And so that's very in line with learning the discipline in a responsible way. And so, depending on where you want to specialize, like I have the AIC designation, Associates in Claims, because there was not a lot of claims coverage in my degree program. And I was curious and wanted to know how that worked, and worked in claims out of college. So I got the Associate in Claims. Because I have a bachelor's in risk management and insurance, I didn't do the designation, but a lot of people will do the ARM designation in addition to their bachelor's. I chose not to do that. But the designations are certainly responsible ways to engage, and also licensing classes, like whatever state you're living in order to be a licensed insurance agent, you have to take a test and go through some required education. That is a good basis to understand how insurance works in your state. And so that will be a good education as well.
So let's go into your day-to-day work. So you work for a global automobile company, lots of different kinds of risks. If for those that are out there, how put it in perspective, could you rattle off some of the risks that concern you and your department on a day-to-day basis for a global company like BMW?
So I will go back to what you were saying earlier when you say the risk manager is the kind of person you think about that's going through and telling people what to do, what not to do, because it's not, safe. So that would actually be a closer description to like the safety team. And so, of course, we use safety department where we partner with safety, and we partner with risk managers in general, partner with all different kinds of departments in order to do their work well and make sure that they're managing the big picture risk from a corporate risk management perspective. And so, what I do from a local level, I am the risk management analyst at a location versus being a risk management analyst or a risk manager for a global company where we place the insurance. And so I'll just make the distinction between my last position and my current position. So at Coca-Cola, I was on a global team where we placed all the coverage, we did all the negotiations, we pulled all the exposure information together and made sure that every, body was considered in that work stream, and then communicated the decisions out to each of the countries or each of the locations around the world. So now I am at one of those locations for another company, for BMW. I'm now at a location versus at the global headquarters. And so I've kind of went to the other side of the coin of the role, but all still risk management. And so instead of placing coverage, now I'm responsible for the administration of the coverage and making sure that everybody's complying locally and that we understand that, how things are communicated from a corporate perspective and making sure that we're engaging responsibly at the local level. And so I make the distinction for a reason, because I see it as like the difference between making a movie and live theater, right? So when you're in a global team, it's like you make a movie, you put it in the can, and you put it out there in the world, and then you get the reviews like much later. Whereas live theater, you get immediate feedback, whether you want it or not, because you're closer to the audience and you're right there in front of them. And so that's the way I feel now, being a local risk manager, because I'm very close to the people and the processes that are impacted by the decisions that I make every day. And so there's instant feedback, and it's a different kind of engagement. And it keeps me very much sharpened and on my toes. Um, and so I appreciate that perspective, and I like it, because, as you know, most actresses will tell you they'll go back to theater just to sharpen themselves, because it's a different kind of engagement and a different kind of intention. And so every day I'm partnering with um, different people, to include safety and compliance folks and our legal team. And it's a true partnership to make sure that we're creating a netting and a web effect as far as the activation of risk management, to make sure that people go home, to their families, and to make sure that people are engaging safely as it relates to our product and the plant.
Yeah. There's another global German-based automobile company that recently got into trouble for building software that said that they were getting better carbon emissions than they really were. And as I pondered that particular crisis, I kept thinking of like a risk management professional that's working at that company. I almost came to the conclusion, like, I don't know if the risk manager could ever have caught that. Like, that is just so deep into the business operations of the company. And now they have this giant reputational problem that they need an Olivia Pope.
Right. They need a team of Olivia Popes.
Yeah.
I read that article, and I'm aware of that. And that's in that particular scenario. I think that's why it's important that people understand that risk management is a proactive discipline, and that it's important to invite risk managers to the table when you have projects and you're making decisions, because I think a risk manager could have caught that if they were at the table. The challenges, and I'm not familiar with the intimate details of what happened there, but just in general, I would say that a risk manager being at the table in the beginning is so valuable, because you get to mitigate risk like this, and they're thinking down the road about the possibilities of what could happen, and they're looking at cause and effect and the snowball effect of actions. And so that's why it's super, super important for all professionals to check in with risk management before they need a crisis manager. you know
Yes. And so my next question is, have you ever have you ever been having dinner on a weekend and all of a sudden you said, oh no, like that's a risk that I hadn't thought of. Like how much of this do you take home with you?
I am a risk manager in every sense of the word. So it's always a part of what I'm thinking. And, it's a part of how I'm thinking. I'm always like 10 or 15 steps ahead. And I think we all manage risk in some degree every day in our lives. We just don't call it that. When you get in the car, you put your seatbelt on for a reason. You're managing the risk. You're managing your risk. When you go somewhere and you have your children with you, and you're make them hold your hands. I mean, you're constantly managing risk in order to make sure that the outcome is good and safe, and not costing you a lot of money. And so for me, it's augmented by the fact that I am actually a risk manager, has studied this and do it every day. um it's always a thought in my mind around the possibilities of of things that could happen. Interestingly, I'll tell you a quick funny story. I used to work for Turner Broadcasting, and at the time I was married to a guy who loved baseball. And so we used to go to baseball games all the time, and it was great and fun and exciting. And then I went to work for Turner Broadcasting, where we were afforded free tickets because Turner owned the Braves. And so we would get free tickets and go to these games and had a great time, great seats. It was a wonderful experience. But I no longer enjoyed being there in the same way because I was very present to the possibilities of things going bad and a file showing up on my desk as a result of those things going bad. And I was, watching children hanging over the batting cage, and, they want to get an autograph or they want a ball and they want these things, and they're just being excited children, and not understanding that if these men with these strong arms are throwing a ball, at several miles an hour, if it pops up and hit them, that's going to be a problem. And so it shifted how I engaged in that space because I was super, super present to, all these possibilities around me. And my ex just laughed at me and, said, just, relax. You can't do anything about it. You enjoyed it before. So what's the big deal? So that's an interesting story. But just to answer your question, it's always a part of my thinking, always a part of my thinking. So.
And that's why we get invited to parties, right, Lawanda? Because we're the life of the party.
Right.
You really shouldn't serve that. Someone could get hurt. I know. Yeah, that's us,
I
unfortunately.
know, like how you consider allergies, like does it have peanuts in it? Like, right. I'm the one. And actually it's funny because I'm the one that my friends will actually call to do a temperature check around different things. Like if they're planning something or whatever, like, what am I missing? What, because again, I'm not the one that's like a dogmatic risk manager that's going to say no, 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 for the sake of saying no. I want to partner with people and be creative about how we can arrive at a yes in a responsible way.
Yeah, I'm the guy that walks into a masonry building and says, "Oh, I hope we don't have an earthquake right now because we won't make it." Life of the party. Yeah. I want to transition a little bit. You're also a life coach,
I
and
am.
I think that's pretty spectacular in that it's becoming a popular profession, but mostly because it's becoming valued. I personally have a life coach as well. I figure if Tiger Woods needs a swing coach for golf, I could probably use a little coaching here and there. Why is that important to you?
Well, interestingly, life coaching is not at all something that I set out to do. I arrived at this the long way around, so to speak. So I had a boutique risk management company with the intention of eventually doing that full time, to do consulting and have some flexibility in my time. But people would not call me for risk management advice. They would call me for other things. They would call me for ghost writing. Some friends that I have in Atlanta area and that are celebrities would call me for assistance in writing and would call me for assistance in other business matters and things of that nature. And so I said, okay, well, of course, I'll help you. It's not exactly what I do, but sure, I have the capacity and I'll help you out. And so in order to understand exactly what they needed from me and to translate that into my world, um, I would hold what I call think tank sessions. So I would have them come over and we would, connect on what exactly do you need. And I would basically just do a mental data dump from them so that I can be clear on what they needed. And they found great value in that. And they felt like it was great training because I would ask them some questions and dig deeper than they thought I would. But it was cathartic for them because they were able to then think more strategically about how they were engaging in their businesses or in life or in their work. And so they started referring others to me for just a think tank session. And so I did some reflection and, tried to understand, what is actually happening here. And so I aligned it with the life coaching career and launched it officially earlier this year as life coaching, and it's called Intelligent Intentions. And basically, I help people through transitions of various aspects of their life. Um, and at one point, I thought of coaching as something very different than risk management. And actually, the more I think about it, and I've really arrived at the conclusion that it is risk management. So instead of managing corporate risk, I'm actually mitigating the risk of people living unfulfilled lives. And it is truly, truly a body of work that sits at the intersection of who I am and what I know. And so it's very important to me. Sometimes it feels like a ministry, sometimes it feels like, work, but it balances my creative and analytical energy all in the same body of work. So I love it and enjoy it and appreciate um, the impact that I'm able to have on my clients.
Could you, for those that are listening that may not be familiar with the process of working with a life coach, could you just briefly detail what you do and what someone that hires a life coach gets?
So life coaching, let me just say, life coaching is a non-regulated discipline. And so there are different types of life coaches depending on what you need. There are some people who specialize in financial coaching, some people that specialize in relationships, career, and all over the map. So depending upon what your need is, you can find a life coach to help you. For me, I am a personal advocate for my clients, je ne sais quoi, so to speak. So whatever that special nuance that is best in them, I advocate for them to bring that to the surface. And I speak life to their possibilities. And it is my goal to literally resuscitate their souls with my word and really just truly speak life to them. I'm very no nonsense and matter of fact, but it's all laced with a spirit of love, and it yields a very effective, endearing, and probably entertaining experience. My clients appreciate the impact and appreciate my manner in a way that I can really get to the root cause, or the proximate cause, as we say in risk management world, of what is ailing them or what is concerning them, in order to arrive at a solve and a salve for them to move forward, to achieve whatever their objectives are.
No, I love that. Intelligent Intentions, is that available? Can people find that online?
Yes, that's the website, www.intelligentintentions.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. And as a life coach, I use my pseudonym that I use for all of my writing, and that's Elle Michelle. So ELLEMICHELL, Elle Michelle. Um,
Okay.
and yes, you can find me
So
online.
yeah,
And it is
I'll put those.
definitely an experience.
Sure, I'll put those on the show notes. Make sure everyone can find those if they're listening to this. Just go to the show notes so you don't have to memorize it while you're trying to drive.
Right.
Yeah, and so this also segues nicely into your philanthropic work, which when you read your LinkedIn profile, it's clearly something you're very proud of, and clearly something that's very important to you. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I have engaged in volunteer work my entire adult life because I truly appreciate and understand that a little bit goes a long way when you have nothing at all. And so I try to position myself to assist wherever I can. And as you can see on my LinkedIn profile, it runs the gamut. But at the core of what I'm the most passionate about are the arts and youth development. And so I'm, often attaching myself to all genres of the arts and youth development projects in a way that gives some insight into exploring possibilities, because I think that's super important for young people, but for all people, to just be reflective, explore possibilities, and be able to live a life that you own intentionally.
I love that. Which, of course, my next question, I have a feeling I know the answer to when you aren't working, what do you enjoy doing? And I have a feeling it's philanthropy and helping other people. But aside from that, and watching baseball games, what do you enjoy doing when you aren't doing all of those other things?
I am balancing. Like I said, I'm one of those rare people who are equally creative and analytical. And so balance is very important for me. And because my job is super analytical, I try to be very intentional about feeding the creative beast, so to speak. So I indulge in the arts, all genres, but I particularly love live music, live theater. I'm a writer. I'm not published, but I love to write. And so I do that, lots of creative writing. I love to travel and just explore. I have an insatiable curiosity about life and different cultures and things of that nature. So I like to explore. So that's what I do when I'm not working. And
Yeah,
that creates for me an internal harmony that allows me to be effective in all other areas of my life.
yeah. When you were mentioning that you were balanced, all I kept thinking about was you standing on one foot with another leg in the air, just like a
Right.
book in one hand, a protractor in another.
Right.
That's the image I had. I swear to God. So
Like in a tree pose for yoga.
that's funny. I asked this next question to everybody. I'm particularly intrigued and curious of your answer because I, I think you might surprise me. I'm hoping you surprise me. What tools or techniques do you use to stay productive and organized?
Hmm. Productive and organized.
Or,
So,
or one or the other. You can answer it any way you want.
right. And so my I guess my north is being progressive. And so I always want to make sure, which I guess another way to say that is productive, but I always want to make sure that I'm being progressive, not only in my doing, but in my being and in my thinking and making sure that I'm evolving. And so I mentor, but I also have mentors. And for me, that is a way for me to do a temperature check to see, you know, what am I doing? How am I progressing and moving forward, and just making sure I'm checking my blind spots, so to speak. I'm a lifelong learner, and like I said before, I'm super curious. I'm always seeking lessons in every experience to try to understand, how I can do like continuous improvement of self as it relates to my career and in my personal life. So maybe in my last life I was an engineer or something, because I'm always thinking of, how do I do it better? How do I, evolve, and how do I move forward? And I also read quite a bit. Most recently, I read a book called The One Thing by Keller, and it has truly organized me in a way that I didn't expect, just like from reading that book, and shifted my perspective in a way that I am more progressive than busy, because a lot of times I think, we have a false sense of productivity just because we're busy. But busy doesn't always equal progressive. And so that book really was able to give me a framework around making that distinction between, movement and progress. And so that's very helpful. And I also have friends and family who I call my love circle, people who are very close to me, who love me unconditionally, who will be very, very, very thoughtful about giving me feedback and very candid about giving me feedback. And I think that's important, because a lot of times nowadays, you have these pseudo relationships and these pseudo connections, and people tell you what you want to hear, and they, you get caught up in all the likes and all this through social media. But you need a core of people who are just going to be real with you and tell you some things that you may not want to hear, but you need to hear. And so I'm blessed to have a beautiful, beautiful love circle of people, who I've known for many years, who kick it to me real, like real, and I do the same for them. So so that's how I, you know do my temperature checks to make sure that I'm being progressive and, staying in my lane, so to speak.
I love that. Besides the one thing, the book that you just mentioned, are there any others that you have found to be influential in your life?
There's so many books, and I'm constantly reading. And so, in addition to that book, I would say I also recently read Influencers, and that was also perspective changing, because I'm an advocate of freedom. So I'm not about telling people what to do. Even in my coaching, I'll tell people, I don't tell grown people what to do. I'll make recommendations and suggestions and help you unpack your thinking in a way that will help you arrive at the solve and salve. But Influencers gave me an understanding that it's not about being dogmatic or telling people what to do, but helping them and influencing their choices and decisions in the direction of their objectives. And so that was a really good book. But any book that helps me to think and evolve my perceptions, or explore my perspective on others as it relates to life and love, are things that I love, and that includes fiction and nonfiction. Some of my favorite authors um, would be Nicholas Sparks, because I'm a hopeless romantic, and in his books, love is always like a character unto itself, in addition to the people that are playing, in there as characters. And so I think that's very interesting, and spills over into how I show up in life in a lot of ways. I also love um, Harlan Coben is a mystery writer, and Pearl Clegg is the best character development writer ever I've experienced. She is absolutely phenomenal. She's an Atlanta-based playwright, but she's also written like 8 novels that are just super delicious and gives a great perspective on life. And two more worth mentioning: the late Elin Harris and the late J. California Cooper, who I've read those books for many years growing up, and have played a role in my evolution of understanding people and connecting with people. So yeah, those would be the authors that I attach to in all of their books.
I love that. I was just reminded of the influencers because Tony posted a blog article on LinkedIn from
Right.
an insurance there. It's called "Leaders Are Readers," and they had a
Mm.
whole. We have a bookshelf at the Insurance Nerd site, and influencers were on this. And guess what? Now we get to add all of these other ones as well.
Yes, yes.
So that's fantastic. Lawanda, wow, time has flown. We've come to the end of the show, and I'm very appreciative of you taking time out of your Saturday morning to spend some time with us and talk about what you do and why you love doing it. I can feel the love.
It is super exciting, and I really do love what I do. Like, as much of an insurance nerd or risk management nerd that makes me sound, I love it. And I tell young people all the time, if you haven't decided what you want to do, like, figure out what you're passionate about and manage the risk of that until you figure out, what else you want to do in that space. And that's why I love what I do so much, because it's created a bit of a polymath. I have to know a little bit about everything, because in order to manage the risk, you have to understand it, right? And so if someone's passionate about something and they want to understand how that thing gets insured, or how that thing gets, how you manage the risk of that thing, that would be a great connection for career opportunities. And National Rims is doing some major, great progressive things to invite young people into the risk management and insurance discipline, and connecting with them and all that they're doing would be great too, through their Rising Risk Professionals and their Student Advocacy Council. And so anyone who's interested, there are resources out there, and that's a good place to start understanding how to navigate being in the risk management and insurance discipline.
Yeah, I love that. That's actually great advice for anything. Do your research, pick something, and then manage the risk around it.
Yeah.
That's it. At the end of the day, that's the best that you can do. That's, life is all about uncertainty. and the thing you at some point you need to make a decision, and then you just manage the risk around it. To me, it's like playing chess. If you have a direct sight to my queen, I'm going to block that and manage that, and that's what life's all about. So there, we got the chess reference. I guess that officially ends the podcast. So Lawanda, thanks again for your time on a Saturday morning. My guest this week has been Lawanda Hall. Lawanda, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.